Hi, this is Alan. Welcome to my presentation on the terminal application assignment. Alright, let's get started. So first is the overview of the applications. Let's suppose we have an imaginary company called NKG Corp. NKG Corp is a warehousing and distribution company. They have a large number of staff working across rotating shifts. The purpose of roster board is that it serves as the company internal applications that allows company staff to provide their availability and unavailability, which is used for roster building and workforce planning. So apart from other small features, the application have four main features: create roster, add future unavailability, view current schedule, and modify current schedule. Let me explain more in detail in the next slide. So the overall structure of the applications start with a welcome banner, followed by an introductions and instructions. Next, users are required to provide their full names and their department. Once done, they are prompted to the home menu, which have five prompts to choose from. The first prompt is to create a rosters. The second prompt to inform their availability. The third prompt is to review their work schedule. The fourth prompt is to modify their work schedule. And the last prompt is to exit the program completely. So in the first prompt, users are required to enter their available days for the following week by selecting from a given list of days. For each chosen day, they need to pick an available shift. When users choose to quit their selections, the program will check if their list of selected days are more or equal than three available days. If yes, then the roster building is complete. Back to home menu. If no, the user are prompted to continue adding more days to the rosters. If they do not wish to add more days, there will be no roster for them. In the second prompt, users are required to enter their unavailable days for the week after the following week, also by selecting from a given list of days. For each chosen day, they can select as many shifts as possible. For example, if they are unavailable for the whole day, they just need to enter all shifts AM, PM, and night. And in the third prompt, the final schedule is displayed in a table format, and users are required to confirm it. If they confirm, they are prompted back to home menu, complete their roster building process. If they do not wish to confirm, they are prompted to select their fourth prompt, which is to modify their current work schedule. Here, users have three options. First is to modify their availability, which is the current roster. Second, to modify their unavailability record or to quit this prompt. If user selection option 1 to modify their rosters, they again have three options to choose from, which is to change a current shift, to remove a current availability, and to add a new availability. Again, after finish the modifications, the program would check if they met the 3 days criteria and prompt user to add more, or else they will not have any rosters. If users select option 2 to modify their unavailability record, they will have two options. One is to keep their current record. Second is to redo their unavailability from the scratch, which will prompt them back to the second prompt, add unavailabilities. Lastly, there's only one way to exit the program completely, which is by selecting the fit prompt in the home menu. Okay, so move on to the explanation of source code. First, I will explain a bit about how I arrange the file in the source code. So I have the main.py is the main file, which include all the functions like input name, department choice, and main menu. The roster.py and the unavailability.py is the file that store all code of the classes with the main function as loaded from file, save to file, and display rosters. The item.py is the files for class item, which have the main function is the from string. The common function.py is the files that contains all the functions for text styling and the functions for checking valid shift input. The create roster function.py is the file that contains the create roster functions, which is imported in the main py as prom1. The add unavailability functions.py is the file that contains add unavailability functions, which is imported in main py as prom2. The view roster function.py is the file that contains the view schedule functions, which is imported in the main py as prom3. And lastly, the modify roster function.py is the files that contain the modify schedule functions, which is imported in main py as prom4. Okay, so I'm going to explain the source code snippet. So here I have the main classes, which is the class rosters and the class item. The class item represent an item objects. So the attributes of item objects are days, shift, and actions or status. The from string is the functions that needs to be converted into a class method, which create an item object by an input string. The string data here is the string that looks like this. Then the from string method will read this string and return an item that looks like this and have attributes, separate attributes for easy access. In general, this is the string format to display to the terminal and saved in CSV file, while this is the format that is used for data processing. So the class rosters represent a roster object. It contains a few functions that belong to the relevant roster object. So the load from file function is used to load data from CSV file to a temporary list named roster for data to be easily accessed and manipulated. And the save to CSV functions is when after data has been manipulated, while in the roster list, the save to CSV file functions will be called to save data back to the CSV file in this format. All right, so moving on to the create roster functions, the data flow starts from initialize the roster object using the roster class. The while loop is used to keep prompting user to input their selections of available days until they hit Q to finish their selection. When they hit Q, this part of code here will check the roster list. If more than 3 days are selected, the main loop is false, which means they have finished their rosters. Now, the roster list is saved to CSV file using this save to CSV functions and the loop break with a thank you message. If there are less than 3 days in the list, a reminder pops up and prompts user to continue adding more days. Another while loop is nested here. If user choose not to continue adding more days, the main loop is false, which also means user have finished their rosters. But the only difference now is because their availability is less than 3 days. So the roster list is not saved to CSV file. So you can see there's no save to CSV function is called here. All right, and before they hit Q, the program will check if the chosen available days are in the days dictionaries. The dictionary was created previously from the given list of Monday to Sunday for user to choose from. So if yes, then again they check if the day has already been selected. If yes, then user will need to choose again because duplicated days are not allowed. Then another while loop is created here to keep prompting user to select their available shift. Here a function to check valid shift is called. If all conditions are met, which means the chosen days that's in the days dictionary is not duplicated and the shift input is valid, then the new item is defined by using the item object. The roster list will keep appending valid items to finally be saved if there are more than 3 items in the list. Finally, a notice message is printed to the terminal. That is the follow of the create roster function. The app availability function was pretty much the same, just no limitation for the number of days and shipped input. So moving on to the modify functions, this function is used to modify the rosters. It is to change the shift of a provided available day. So first step is to initialize the roster using class rosters. Then the item which is currently in the CSV file are loaded to the roster list using the load from file functions. And then it is displayed to the terminal for user to know what days are currently in the record using the display roster functions. And then a dictionary is created to store the current items in the list, with keys are the item's index and values are the item itself. Then a while loop is created to keep prompting user to pick an item they want to modify until they hit Q to finish. Another while loop is nested here to check if the chosen index is listed. If yes, user can move on to enter their ship they want to change to. Then again, the function to check valid shift is called. If it is a valid input for shift, then the values in the dictionary will be updated with the new information. And then the new roster list if saved to file, CSV file using the save to CSV functions. And finally, a notice message is printed to the terminal. So basically, the remove functions and add function work pretty much with the same flow. And finally, a thought on the development process. It is a challenging project. I find these aspects are the hardest to handle. So first is object-oriented programming. My normal algorithm thinking is still procedural programming. Not until almost all app features were coded, then I realized there were a few repetitive part of code. So I have to redesign the code structures and apply OOP, which made data manipulations become much more easier and code is reusable. Secondly, I still find it hard to make the code dry as I wanted. My abstractive thinking is yet to develop since this is my first time to approach a programming language. And I get more exposure to various code challenges and practice is crucial to improve this. And finally, testing. I find it is still a challenge to find a relevant test case. I guess it depends on how we design our code to facilitate testing process, especially with unit tests. But overall, I really embrace the whole development process. Many concepts have come to realization, and things I've learned from the course are gradually making more sense to me. So, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.